Animals get into some weird and wonderful places, much to our dismay. No one likes finding a cat stuck in their drain pipe, a frog in their bathtub, or a fox in their garage. However, whether they're stuck or just making themselves at home, we always know we need to help them back out. Often we can do the job ourselves by opening the door or catching them in a net, but other times we need professional help. Even then, sometimes rescuers have to take unusual courses of action. One March morning, a man returned to his 10th-story apartment in New York to be greeted by something he never expected. A little squirrel's nest had been destroyed by construction workers not 2 hours earlier, and the desperate new mama squirrel needed a warm place to look after her babies. She didn't have much time before they froze, so she crawled in through the open apartment window in an attempt to make a new nest, and when the owner returned, he found her 2 squirrel kits under his pillow. The babies were surrounded by dried pine needles, leaves, and twigs that their mother had collected to try to keep her babies warm. The man was in shock. This was not what he expected to see on his bed after a long, hard day at work. As he watched, he noticed that the babies were just hours old, and the mother was erratically running to and fro in his apartment, bringing more nest materials for her tiny young. Branches were littered over his bed, and the mother wasn't finished yet. As soon as the man realized the babies were there to stay, he phoned a wildlife team for help. They arrived and confirmed to the man everything he had assumed. They were tiny eastern gray squirrel babies with just a few hours of life behind them. Their mother had, in fact, chosen his apartment to use as a nest due to having nowhere to raise them or care for them properly, and were likely to remain there for the long haul. Alas, the rescue team was there to help. Eastern gray squirrels are indigenous to the eastern regions of North America. They live on nuts, berries, insects, and any other food they can forage for. Their incisors have indeterminate growth, meaning they continually grow throughout their lives. Squirrels are incredibly intelligent and exhibit deceptive behaviors and incredible spatial memory. They are crepuscular, meaning they are most active at dusk and dawn. Squirrels also have a number of predators, including hawks, foxes, and snakes. In Canada and the United Kingdom, the eastern gray squirrel is just called a gray squirrel. Less experienced eastern gray squirrels will usually only breed in spring, but older squirrels may birth another litter in summer too. They will only have a second litter, however, if there is an abundance of food. Females are fertile after the age of 1 and have litters of 1 to 4 kits typically. Breeding seasons are around December to February and June or July, with gestation lasting roughly 44 days. If a female loses her young, however, she will come back into estrus and birth a later litter. The wildlife rehabilitators and the owner of the apartment watched in amazement as the mother collected more and more for her nest. Each time she returned, the team tried to persuade her to take her babies back outside with her. They encouraged her to pick her young up and build a new nest elsewhere, but she didn't seem interested. She would simply turn and run back outside for more supplies. They were growing more concerned as to what to do with the squirrels, while the mother relentlessly collected twigs. As the man and wildlife team watched in awe, the apartment owner wondered what he was supposed to do with the little kits. Were they about to claim his home as their own? Would the wildlife team take the family? Would the squirrels leave later that evening, or perhaps when they were a few days old? As they all observed from afar, they noticed something heartbreaking. The mother hadn't returned. She had abandoned her tiny baby squirrels on his bed. Now what were they supposed to do? Squirrels are known for abandoning their young in stressful circumstances. In situations where a mother or her babies are ill, or she feels as though they won't survive, she will abandon her offspring in order to keep herself alive and not waste her energy. They will also leave their babies if they're frightened by loud noises, such as fireworks or predatory threats. In this circumstance, however, the mother abandoned her babies because she wasn't able to look after them, what with the lack of a nest or suitable environment. In a usual squirrel rescue, babies would be cared for and nurtured with no human interaction to be released back into the wild. That wasn't an option this time, however. Without having ever experienced the wild, these babies wouldn't cope well alone, with no mother to teach them. They would, however, have each other to learn from, so it was something they could consider. It would all depend on how they recover from the abandonment, and quite possibly hypothermia from having an insufficient nest and no mother keeping them warm. Unfortunately, in the time that the wildlife team spent in the apartment with the owner, one of the tiny babies passed away, leaving just one little female squirrel. The kit was now completely alone. Also, if you've not done so already, please subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell to get inspired by these animal stories every day. Now, back to the story. The poor baby had very little hope of surviving, with no mother and having just lost her sister. She had also been born during an abnormal birthing season, meaning the mortality rate was already much higher than usual. The wildlife rehabilitators, Christina and Michael, were determined to give her a chance at life, though. With the early birthing season for eastern gray squirrels ranging from December to early February, squirrel kits should be born between late February and early March. This squirrel was a few weeks too late, and those few weeks make a significant difference to kit survival rates. So many questions had been raised. Were there problems in her mother's pregnancy? Did she lose her first litter that season and thus had a much later one? Either way, they didn't have much time before this squirrel lost her life too. Christina and Michael decided to do the only thing they could think of: adopt the baby squirrel. They wanted to give the baby a chance at life, and although this chance seemed slim, they were willing to give it a try. They named the kit Thumbelina and took her home to rehabilitate her, even though in New York it is illegal to keep pet squirrels, but they were happy to take the risk if it meant saving the abandoned baby. They were ready for the daunting challenge. They had no idea how long Thumbelina would survive or what they'd do after she recovered, seeing as squirrels, like most animals, rely on siblings and family to learn all of their usual behaviors. With no other squirrels around, how would she learn to forage, climb, or even reproduce later on in life? They always worried about her future, if she was even likely to have one after her ordeal, but nevertheless they devoted their time to raising her. As soon as Christina and Michael got their new baby home, they set out trying to save her life. Using all they could to keep her warm, including a hoard of blankets, they protected Thumbelina. They nursed her with a tiny bottle full of special nutrients and milk that she needed and would have otherwise got from her mother. They protected her from all they could, and in her first few weeks, they made sure she stayed warm and full. They tried to give her the best chance they could. Growing squirrels have their mothers and siblings for warmth and guidance, but poor Thumbelina had no other squirrels to do the job, so it was down to her human parents. As soon as a baby squirrel is weaned, they are off learning to forage for themselves, climbing trees and leaping around. Michael and Christina were worried about what would happen to Thumb as she grew older, and whether she could be introduced back to the wild where she belonged. Her future didn't look promising, but they refused to give up. Thumb made it through her critical first weeks and months. She had grown healthy and lively following her nursing and recovery. She could eat solid food, had opened her eyes, and was able to run, so her human parents decided it was time to reintroduce her to the wild. They tried and failed numerous times to get her back outside with her own kind because she just wasn't interested. They decided it was time to consult with a veterinarian about where to go from there. The veterinarian told Christina and Michael that Thumbelina had been inside and close with humans for too long for her to be successfully re-released and wouldn't survive. Rather than put her life at risk or have her euthanized, the pair of rehabilitators decided to keep their beloved pet squirrel. She had become an integral part of their family. Christina and Michael adored Thumbelina, and she loved them too. So finding out that she had no other option than to stay with them was a far cry from bad news. Thumbelina's life had been very different to your average squirrel's, and not just because she was raised indoors as a solitary squirrel and by two humans. She progressed slower than a typical kit is expected to and is much less reactive. Rather than open her eyes at 4 or 5 weeks of age like a squirrel usually would, Thumbs didn't open until she was nearly 9 weeks old. She also only fed off of milk for much longer than a usual squirrel baby, with most kits wanting hard food very early on. Thumb has gone on to live a healthy life and is incredibly happy in her unusual city home. She loves nothing more than to snuggle up with her human mom and munch on avocado. Most squirrels, seeing as they are very high-energy rodents, run, bound, and jump everywhere they go, but not Thumbelina. This tiny squirrel enjoys ambling along and lounging around, particularly on the windowsill, where she can watch the outside world that she has no interest in actually being in. Not that Thumbelina is anything like a typical squirrel in any other way, but Thumb even despises the outdoors. On many occasions, her human parents have taken her outside, to which she always refuses. She hates cold weather and would much rather be cuddled by Christina and Michael. They've also found that she is afraid of other squirrels and buries her head in Christina's shirt upon meeting one. She doesn't even like acorns, as you'd expect from a squirrel, and would much rather go for some snap peas. Thanks to Christina and Michael, Thumbelina was given another chance at life. Rescuing her was one of the best things they ever did. Thumb is now thriving and playful. She's unlike any squirrel the pair have ever encountered, but they wouldn't have the mischievous rodent any other way. They have made a lifelong friend in Thumbelina, and she is one happy little squirrel. So long as they don't turn the vacuum cleaner on, because she hates that almost as much as she hates the outdoors. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up and consider sharing it with your friends and family. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next one.